Community responsibility. Everybody should be responsible for the community that they live in, and stuff. Um, for example, I just moved into a neighborhood, and my first Christmas there, I thought, well, I don't know my neighbors, but I'm at least going to gift them something. So the grandmothers, helping grandmothers, they make wreaths and they sell wreaths, and then the money goes to helping grandmothers in Africa. So every year I buy about 10 wreaths, and I just gift them to my neighbors so that anybody driving will say, oh, they all have the same wreath, but that's because we're helping grandmothers, you know what I mean, and stuff. So, but those kind of things, that's the responsibility to your community is to be, community-minded. Responsible leadership, it's not being the boss. That's not leadership. Leadership is when you do something amazing that people automatically want to follow because you're doing something good. Totally different than politics, I think, because I can't help it. I lived in the States, so I am interested in, because I have children and grandchildren living in the States, so it does matter to me who the president's going to be, and stuff. So it's quite fretful right now, what they're calling leadership and stuff. So reverence for the sacred. And sacred isn't just what we call sacred objects. I think, I videotaped an elder picking medicine one time, and I was just saying, show me the medicine, being a naive, learner. Show me the medicine. And he goes, well, this one's for this. This one's for when you have a, sunburn. This one is for when you have boils. This one's, and then all of a sudden he goes, it's all medicine, and stuff. Because he was able, like even skunk cabbage, who would think that skunk cabbage was so good for our swelling of our ankles? And, there's just a whole lot of things, and it's just amazing. So for me, he was an exemplary example of everything is sacred, and stuff. Even stones, I'm not sure if you guys were in tune about the White Ribbon Campaign. The White Ribbon Campaign is young men and older men having chapters that protect, abuse against women, or not protect abuse against women. How do I say it? Mm-hmm. Prevent abuse against women, and stuff. And this young high school student spoke in front of the town crowd, because we had a march, and I was there with them. And I was just so taken by this young man. He says, I'm a nerd, but I want to make sure that I'm always going to pass the message on that we never abuse our women and to respect, etc. I happened to have a white stone in my medicine bag, and don't remember when it was put in there, but I took it out and I says, this is for your strength. May may there be more young men like you. But as long as you keep this message going, there will be. I mean, so that's that reverence for the sacred, and collectivity, common good. This is universal and stuff. Is doing things together for the common good is a good source. And all aspects of culture, yeah, you can go ahead. Teachings of the elders. Never, ever underestimate the elders. I actually call them scholars. I call them scholars. For a long time, they were considered and called informants. But I says, no, they're the scholars, because they everything that they learn is life learning and not necessarily book learning. Like, I'm not saying book learning is wrong, but I can see the difference in the knowledge that I carry, which was book learning. But now I've been lucky enough to work with elders for the past 30 years that there's a difference in what I'm learning from my elders and what I'm learning from my books. Values, beliefs, worldviews, and ideals. It's our culture isn't something from the past, and we have to view it as something that's an ideal. Because as I'll mention in the next PowerPoint on what happens when these gifts are abused and stuff. So, okay. appropriate behavior and protocols. Like there was a young girl who was her first time coming to a lodge, and I had to cover her up because she's, well, I heard it was hot, so she came in something really skimpy, you know, and I had to tell her, I says, I know it's going to be hot, but you have to cover up. It's a protocol, you know, and stuff. You have to wear a skirt. And she says, I don't even wear a skirt. And I says, well, you know what? It's still very important that you wear a skirt. And she, you know, she listened, she accepted, and showed them how to sit in the lodge, especially when it's a mixed lodge, you know, and stuff. So there's some protocols and stuff. So appropriate behavior is very important. Knowledge of the natural world. I took my students for at the NBCC course on spirituality. On Friday was our last class, and I took them to the sacred site where there's going to be a ceremony there on June 4th, I think, for Treaty Day. And it's a burial site. It's between the Delta and the Lieutenant Governor's house, and there's a sacred site there. We've been doing ceremony there for many years. And so I took them over there, taught them how to offer their tobacco, explained a little bit of what we did, burying the bones from the museum there, and there's a burial site there as well. And then I took them to Kingsclear First Nation. I was going to take them to a place in the community where we had Medellin in my language. Medellin is someone who has powers, a shaman. And so in that community, I actually went there years ago with the elder who told me the story, and he was saying there was a story about land dispute, and so this non-Aboriginal farmer and the Maliseet farmer were sharing a plot of land to grow their vegetables. And so what ended up happening, the non-Aboriginal kept on moving his stakes over this and making it smaller and smaller so that the Aboriginal man only had one little strip by the road. And so he says, why do you need more? Your family isn't any bigger than mine. You know, actually I have more to feed because I feed the whole community, but yet you want more. And so, and man said, well, I'm entitled to it, and so on and so forth. I bought the land or something like that. So there was this dispute. So the elder, the Aboriginal elder, had his foot on a rock, and the anger was so forceful that he left a footprint, and that footprint can still be seen on the rock. And then after that year, no more food ever grew. The potatoes were as small as marbles and everything, so nobody could use the land afterwards. So the people still talk about that, and there's still elders who remember that. And so I was going to take them there, but it was raining and it was bad. So what we ended up doing is helping the community do spring cleanup, you know, and stuff. And I says, you know, being on the land isn't just going for a picnic. Let's help this community. So we did. So my students went, and I think there was good camaraderie happening, you know what I mean, for these people doing it and stuff. So anyways, so natural world is important. Knowledge of the spiritual world. That's, you know, when we talk about death and that spiritual world, it's that, you know, like in my experiences with death, I've seen, I helped this one elder who was crossing over, and I remember this light shining. It was middle of the night. I remember this light shining through her hospital window, and she was just positively glowing in this beautiful light. And as I was saying something to her in the language, I looked over in the hallway, and I could see a little girl running by, and I'm going, who would have a baby here in the hospital this time of the night? There was only one other person who saw that little girl. And so then this woman, she went in a peaceful way, and then her relative said she lost a little girl that was only 3 years old, and that little girl was about 3 years. So that spiritual connection, her little girl coming together to meet her, you know, I just think it's amazing and stuff, you know. So there's so many of those spiritual connections that we have. And even sometimes you might feel somebody touch you and you'll, oh, there's nobody here, okay, you know. Rather than be afraid, give gratitude, because that's somebody, you know, that's letting you know they've got your back. They're you know, so not to be afraid of it, but to honor it. And I'm seeing more and more young people that unfortunately they're being medicated because the doctors are assuming that they have bipolar or they're hearing voices and etc. And for us, it's very sacred. It's nothing to be medicated, you know. So granted, there might be times when there is something out of balance, but in our culture, those are the children we want to nurture, you know, and honor and praise and build on. So,
I'm just going to switch the batteries.
yeah.